Example 6, verify the identity 2 cosecant x cosine squared of x over 2 equals sine of x over 1 minus cosine of x. General rule of thumb here is whichever side is uglier is probably the side you're going to be able to work with better. So I would probably take the left-hand side of this problem. The right-hand side is rather simplified. It looks pretty nice, so chances are we can't do much to it. If I take the left-hand side, write it as is, so 2 cosecant of x. I'm okay if you want to write it like this, cosine of x over 2 squared. It means the same thing, and just a more useful way of writing it, I think, to instead of having a trig function squared that looks like that, just go ahead and put parentheses around it squared. If you're going to use one of those Pythagorean identities to like 1 minus sine squared or something like that, then maybe leave it in this format. But if you got like cosine of 2x or cosine of x over 2 squared, maybe writing it like that might be more beneficial to you. That's the left-hand side, so I'm going to start there. What do you think for the first step?
Cosecant to 1 over sine.
Okay, and?
Number 39.
Number 39, cosine of x over 2. If you're trying to make an expression that has the same angles x over here, and you have the wrong angle over here, changing that angle is one of the first things you want to focus on. And the fact that sine and cosine, changing this to the sine cosine form of it would be helpful too. So if we start there, 2 cosecant is just 2 over sine. That's being multiplied by the cosine of x over 2 squared. Cosine of x over 2, according to number 39, is plus or minus the square root of 1 plus cosine of x all over 2. And the identity specifically states that it is plus or minus in this point. If we're doing an identity, we have to put the plus or minus symbol there. No way around it. But keep in mind that we're replacing this with this within the parentheses, so this entire expression is in the parentheses being squared. So that's by number 4 and number 39, according to our trig sheet. Okay. Next, if I'm squaring a square root, I'm going to get what's underneath, right? And whether it's a positive or a negative square root, when I square it, it becomes a positive, right? So officially the plus minus has to be in this step, but once I square it, it's going to become positive. So 2 over sine of x stays the same, and this becomes 1 plus cosine of x over 2. And that's, let's say, squared. Simplified squared. I squared the expression. Squared a square root. That might be a good way of putting it. All right. So I'm to this point now. Looking at it, it's looking pretty positive here, right? It's not the same, but at least I've got sine and cosine in the expression. The 2's are going to cancel out, and that gets me to 1 plus cosine of x over sine of x. And I'm going to put the reason for that as just simplified. Anytime you're just doing basic algebraic steps to make the expression simpler, simplification simplified is a sufficient reason why. Anytime you're substituting in, I want the numerical number, like whatever on the sheet. This was number 39, number 4, that kind of thing. I'm at a point where this is the most simplified I can possibly make it. It doesn't match the simplified version of what I'm looking for, right? So this is the situation where I'm going to go ahead and create part of the answer in my expression. So I can either multiply top and bottom by sine or top and bottom by 1 minus cosine, take your pick. I'm going to do 1 minus cosine. Keep in mind the top should be encased in parentheses, it's a binomial. That's just multiplying top and bottom by the same thing. You're allowed to do that anytime you feel like it. And again, that's one of my things I try to do when I get stuck. I've got this nice, very nice looking expression. It's very simplified. It looks great. It doesn't match what I want. So I just go ahead and invent part of my expression within the answer. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this up here. Okay, but it's still pretty ugly and there's other stuff to do. Once I run out of ideas, there's nothing else I can possibly do to that. At this point, it doesn't match. So just make part of that expression show up, see what happens. So if I do that, I'm going to get 1 minus cosine squared on top and sine of x times 1 minus cosine of x on the bottom. And that's by multiplying top and bottom by the same thing. And also, I'm going to call it FOIL. Just multiplying the difference of squared without get 1 minus cosine squared. Now again, this is my goal, this is what I'm looking for, and this is part of that expression. So what I'm expecting is the rest of this thing, and I should say sine of x, not just sine of x. All right. The rest of this stuff should make a sine on top, right? So I'm going towards that goal. I see 1 minus cosine squared x on top. That's just sine squared of x. That's still over sine of x times 1 minus cosine of x. And again, what alerts me to that, other than the fact I've been doing this for so many years, they just jump out to me. But I'm trying to make this stuff here that I've got circled become sine of x. That's what I want it to be, right? So cosine in that expression is probably a bad thing. So is there some way I can change that cosine squared into a sine squared? And that's the exact, I think it's number 6, right?
Yep.
Number 6 exactly says that. And at that point, sine squared over sine, those cancel, leave me sine of x at the first on top, 1 minus cosine on the bottom, and that's just by canceling. So we start with the left-hand side, we end up with the right-hand side legally through mathematical correctness. We get everything done correctly. I could have gone the other way with this. If I had gone here to here, I'd have to multiply both top and bottom by sine of x because I felt like it. I would have to change that to 1 minus cosine squared because I would have expected that I had to cancel this out somehow to get to here. And that would have made this, which I would have just thought about separating them to create this, and the 2's would just would have magically appeared there. And then of course this is that squared. It's not likely to go that direction. So again, going from the ugly expression to the simple expression is usually a lot easier than the other way around. There's a lot of inventive thought necessary to go the other way, and it's not very pleasant. So again, making that first decision, which side should I start with, is a very important decision. So make sure you think it through for a little bit before you decide.